the group of people that are going to be completely responsible for making sure that the tasks necessary to achieve the project and to assure that we get the deliverable that we're looking for, as identified in the project charter, that it happens. And so the project team has to be one that is going to be a lot of different roles. We're going to have, obviously, the project manager is going to be part of the team, but we're going to have business analysts, experts in various areas. Depends on what the project is, basically. But the idea is that we need to recruit a good project team, one that we can get committed to task, one that's going to be willing to assure that the project is done, and we're going to have to make sure that this team will be able to execute what we need to have done so that the project can get done in a timely and successful fashion. So we're going to have certainly certain required members, people that we really have to have to make it a success. Number one, of course, the project manager. Maybe that goes without saying, but I just said it anyway. We have to have a good project manager. We also need to have, and this is imperative, I can't stress this enough when I'm talking to anybody about doing a project like this and having a team of people working on it. You have to have a representation from the stakeholders. There has to be somebody who is either the sponsor of the project or somebody has a very, very highly interested, vested interest in this project. You have to have that representation. I worked on a project once. I got called into a project that was failing simply because there was no representation of the stakeholders. And when they got wind of what was going on in the project, all hell broke loose. It's the easiest way to describe it. So you have to have a member of the stakeholders' core interest group, that somebody has to be the representative. You need to have probably a good business analyst. Maybe not necessarily the project manager, might be a good business analyst, but it's always good to have at least two. If the project manager is a business manager, you still need to have an independent business manager, I think, simply because you have to make sure that the project is going to fit within the scope of the business that we're doing. And then you'll have experts in various subject matters, depending upon what the project is. If it's a construction, you're going to have expert, probably some representation from the architects, the contractors. There's lots of different expertise that you might have to have. And the better these people are in terms of their ability to work on their particular subject matter, the better the expertise, the more likely you're going to have a successful project. So you have to have people that understand the process, that are hopefully are driven by the goals and the objective of the project, so that they get there. You have people who can solve problem solving, and certainly want to have a positive attitude, great interpersonal skills, wonderful communicators. If you can have this, you got a much better chance of success than you would have if you have people that just don't communicate well, don't interact with people well. I'm not saying you have to be extroverts. It's perfectly okay to have introverts if they're willing to cooperate and work as part of the team members. But you have to have people who have a good understanding of what the process is that they're dealing with and why. And so this is really, really important. So it's up to the project manager, and I talked about the need of the project manager to actively involve in staffing. This is the point where on the quiz, I asked the question, which of the managerial functions do we typically don't include as a managerial function? And the four basic ones are planning, organizing, success. I'm sorry. I'll get it out in a minute. But planning, organizing, leading, and seeing leading successful teams where my head was. Anyway, and control. Those are the four basic ones. But in this case, in the case of projects, the project manager needs to be actively involved and primarily concerned with the staffing the project, because they have to be able to make sure that everybody understands the importance of the project, why we're doing this, how it's going to be done. And so we need to look at people that have the skill sets that I just talked about, people who can solve problems, people who have a technical expertise in their particular area, people who have good interpersonal skills. Granted, we can't always get that, but if we can, it just simply makes a better team, and one that's probably going to make sure that we're going to be somewhat successful in the project. And maybe the best way of getting people that are going to care about the project is to ask for volunteers. You can't always make the assumption that if I appoint a bunch of people, they're going to be involved in the step of the project. But the key here is that we want to have a team that is a high-performing, very, very, very involved group of people. Oftentimes we talk about synergy, and I've noted that in the past, sometimes you get really, really very positive synergy where you take 2 or 3 or 4 people together and put them together, and the work that they can produce is a whole lot more than they could have done individually. But sometimes, and this is unfortunate, sometimes we might run into a case of negative synergy where maybe 3 people working together don't get along well. You might have 2 of them gang up on the third, and so you're losing productivity. That the sum of their output would be less than you would get if you had them do things individually. So you don't want that. You want to make sure that you have people that understand that this is it's going to be a job. It's going to be a high-performing job, and one that you have to be able to deal with. So a good performing team is one that people have this communality, this share of purpose. They know each other's talents and they appreciate their talents. They know they're going to have differences, but they also have to be open-minded, be able to accept the differences of other people. And so it's something we really, really, really have to be very careful about in terms of creating a good project team. I can't stress this enough. So as the project manager, you got to understand how the teams function. A high-performing team, whenever a team gets together, in management, we talk about how teams are organized, and we talk about the norming and the storming and all this other stuff. So the stages of teams are basically this. You have teams that form. That's the first stage, forming stage, where they come together and they get oriented on the project and they start to understand each other a little better. Then you have what's referred to as the storming stage, and this is where the team members start to get, if there's going to be any intra-group conflict, this is typically where it comes out. And as the project manager, you really need to be very much aware during this stage, during this, generally the second phase, where people start to figure out their roles, and then there's quite a bit of potential for conflict here. Then you enter what's referred to as the norming stage. The norming stage is where the team comes together, becomes a cohesive group. You set the expectations of the group. You have the forming of a cohesive group of people. They have really identified how we're going to work together as a group. And then once the group has reached this normative stage where people understand and they recognize how to deal with conflict, etc., then you enter what's called the performing stage. The performing stage is where we want to be. This is where the project is being worked on, and we get a solution to the project. People understand their roles in the team. And then finally, after the project's done, you're going to have the adjourning phase where the team will break up. Now, you understand during a project like this, sometimes you may have people who come on at different stages in the project where their primary work is being done. But as a project manager, it's very important that you understand how best to select this team and how to make sure that this is a high-performing team. Typically, you don't want too many people in the team. Probably the max on a good team would be no more than 10, and that's starting to stretch it. If you can get people to volunteer, that's great. You're going to understand that there will probably be some people that come in and do things and leave, but you need to have at least a core group of people that are going to be pretty much continuous, because you need this continuity throughout this process to make sure that as certain team members, their functionality may be more or less, depending at the start or the end of the process, than other people. And so their activity may be lesser, but you need to have some people, at least a core group of, I'd say, 3 or 4 individuals that are going to be on the project team throughout the duration of the project to make sure the project works properly. You got to make sure that you have established a good culture in this team, a culture of interdependence and trust between the team members. And if they don't do that, it can be very problematic. They have to understand that the project manager, the project manager, are the one person that they solely report to. You want to make sure that the team does not have it's intergrouping cliquish if you can. You don't want to have groupthink where we all think exactly the same, because we want diversity in a team. We want different ideas. This is one of the reasons when we put together a team, we have different people with different skill sets. Got to have that. But we have to make sure that on this team that it is a cohesive group, and it is people that understand the project manager is the one person. If there's conflict, and we'll talk about conflict and managing conflict at a later time, if there is conflict, they look to the project manager to resolve that problem. So we have to make sure that we have clear understanding of how things are to be communicated. Things go through the project manager, and it is imperative as a project manager that you make sure that this team at all stages of the project are well informed. Communication. This is key. Might be on a quiz, I might say, what is the key element of assuring successful projects? Good communication. Anyway, that's how we get a team established. And again, I know these aren't professional, but hopefully you'll find them to be helpful. In addition to the reading material as well as the other videos that I'm posting. Take care, and I hope all's well with all.